There are a ton of conferences in the marine science and conservation field, and each one of them has its own place and its own value when it comes to what you do as a scientist. You know, some conferences are great for graduate students going to present. Actually, many of them do. They have poster sessions and everything. But also, it's great to meet up with colleagues, meet new friends and colleagues, and collaborations to come up with different studies and so forth, and just learn of what's happening in the field that you specialize in. And some of these conferences specialize in very specific things, whether it be like ecotoxicology, whether it be sharks, whether it be marine mammals. There's all different types of conferences. But I'm going to tell you that this conference that we are going to talk about today, the International Marine Conservation Congress that's happening in South Africa this year, this October, is the conference that you want to go to. If you've never been to a marine conference, this is the one you've gone to. This is the one you want to go to. If you've been to a number of them, this is still the one that you want to go to. You have the best time. You learn the most things. You learn about communication, science communication. You learn about all the different types of science that's going on in marine conservation. This is the episode that you want to listen to if you want to find out the best conference on the conference chain for marine science and conservation. So here we're going to talk about it on this episode of this How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And one of those ways that you can live for a better ocean and really learn how to speak up for the ocean is to attend conferences in the marine science and conservation world. And they're not just for scientists, and they're not just for conservationists. If you're interested in the ocean, I highly recommend that you attend some of these conferences, because at these conferences, you get sessions full of studies, people doing studies on marine science and conservation, whether it be about sharks, whether it be about dolphins, whether it be about coral reefs or seagrasses. It doesn't matter. You get all the different types of presentations, studies, you get poster sessions, you meet graduate students, you meet the future of the marine science and conservation world, you meet the people who've been doing it for 30, 45 years. It is amazing. And the conference to go to is the International Marine Conservation Congress that's happening in Cape Town, South Africa, October 13th to the 17th this year, 2024. This is one of my favorite, probably the favorite conference to go to. It is chock full of people who are they're just super welcoming. They're inclusive. They're fun. They want to talk about marine science. If you want to geek out about marine science and conservation and even science communication, this is the conference to go to. It's a congress. It's not even a conference. It's just a meeting place. You get to learn about collaborations, potential future collaborations that you might have. This is the conference that you want to go to. I highly recommend it. We're going to talk about it today because Dr. David Schiffman and Dr. Heather Penny are here today to talk about what the conference is all about and why you should go to that conference. So if you want to go to that conference, you can sign up at the link in the show notes. There's early registration right now. I highly recommend that you go sign up. If you want to listen to this interview and then sign up, that's fine. But I go sign up now, or as you're listening to this interview, you sign up. But it's a register and it's early registration, so it's cheaper to join now than it is ever. So go check that out. Here is the interview with Dr. Heather Penny and Dr. David Schiffman talking about the International Marine Conservation Congress happening at Cape Town, South Africa in October 13th to the 17th, 2024. Check it out. Enjoy the interview, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Heather. Hey, David. Welcome back to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about the International Marine Conservation Congress 2024?
Absolutely. Thrilled to be here.
Right on. I am super excited. Heather, I think this is the first time you've been on this podcast, if I remember correctly. Right. And Dave, this is probably your 45th, I'm going to say. Like, we've done a lot of episodes.
It's nice to
together.
be back.
I'm glad to have you back. Heather, hopefully this will be first of many to have you on.
Absolutely.
We're here to talk about the conference, the International Marine Conservation Congress, which is, as I was saying just before we started recording, is my favorite conference that I've been to this day, and it continues to be my favorite. This year, it's in Cape Town, South Africa. We have a lot to talk about just in terms of the excitement of going to South Africa and just having a different history and a different host city. And it'll just be fun to just get to know the sort of the local issues that we'll probably get to know, as well as meet some old friends and colleagues. And I think it'll be great. So lots to talk about. But before we get to that, let's start with Heather. Why don't you just let us know who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I am Heather Penny. I just started a tenure track position at St. Francis Xavier University, which is in Nova Scotia, Canada. I'm actually in aquatic resources, so I'm a biologist by training, but this program is an interdisciplinary one. It's pretty cool. I have been involved with Society for Conservation Biology's marine program since 2016, I think, when IMCC was in St. John's. I helped with like volunteering and stuff like that. In 2019, I was then elected as the secretary, and I've been here ever since. And so this will be my fourth IMCC, including the one that we did online a couple of years ago. And so myself and David and Shally are co-chairing, which I'm pretty excited about. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. But
it's a lot. That's a lot of work. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Dave, why don't you remind people who you are and what you do?
Sure. I wear many hats at this point. I think I have 9 part-time jobs, and I think I've been on the podcast talking about 5 of them before. But in this capacity, I am the science officer for the Society for Conservation Biology Marine Program, and I am one of 3 co-chairs, along with Heather and our president, Dr. Shily Johri.
This is, I think, what a lot of people don't realize when we hear from board members of societies, especially board members who are actively participating in planning a conference, how much time it takes up. These are volunteer positions. These are not paid, and it takes a lot of time out of your already busy schedules from a work perspective, and not even including your personal lives and things like that. Can you, Heather, maybe you've been with the society for quite a long time as a board member, can you just kind of talk a little bit about what's expected? Because I think a lot of people, I always tell people, like, if you want to do some good or get active in marine conservation, one of the ways you can do that is join society and even join a board. But can you just kind of give from your perspective the time commitment it takes and why you continue to do it?
One of the things with volunteering with societies is that you can give as much or as little as you have time to do. Right. So if you don't have a lot of time, you could, serve on a subcommittee or something like that. We have a policy committee, we have a science committee at SCB Marine program. If you are considering chairing or co-chairing a conference, estimate how much time you think it's going to take times by about 4. And that's probably a better estimate. It's even with 3 co-chairs, we're finding it a lot of work. And, it comes and goes a little bit. For Society for Conservation Biology Marine Program, most of what we do is gearing up for IMCCs. We have some other things going on, like small grants programs and stuff like that. But, much of our work is every other year when we're doing IMCC. Mm-hmm. But in terms of volunteering, actually, to help with because there's SCB Marine and then there's the conference. In terms of helping out with the conference, we have a whole slew of things that people could help do. In fact, we actually have a volunteer coordinator, and I can't remember actually if it's a coordinator, 2 coordinators, or 1 and a sub. I can't remember.
2 people are helping to coordinate volunteers, and the titles I think are somewhat fluid. 2
people are volunteering to help volunteers because we're going to have quite a few, and so there's the on the ground. A lot of people, especially students, they can't really do a lot leading up because people are busy, especially where we're in October, where like before IMCC is a lot of people's field work. But we have a discount on registration, right, for volunteers?
There is a discounted registration associated with early career members, associated with members from the developing world, associated with some level of volunteering.
Yeah, so I coordinated volunteers for the last 2 in-person IMCCs, and so if you put in X amount of hours, you got 50% back on your registration, is how we did it before. And so it's a way to kind of help subsidize your participation in IMCC. Plus, you get experience, which you can put on your CV. One of the things that happened for me when I started applying for, like, I'm going to call it big girl jobs, is that my service section of my CV, especially where I went into academia, was already full, right? So a lot of people, when they're going in to try to get a tenure track position, like, maybe you were part of your grad society, or maybe you helped with a meeting or two or whatever. But mine, because of, in large part, SCB Marine was really, really full already. And I was able to pull on a lot, in my postdoc, for example, I had some leadership stuff, but nothing compared to what I got out of IMCC. So no, it's not paid, but
yes, the ability to volunteer in a leadership position, especially for early and early mid-career scientists, is hugely valuable professionally. It's looked on favorably in grant applications. It's looked on favorably in job applications. And also, I find it really enjoyable. IMCC, as you guys have mentioned, is one of my favorite meetings. I absolutely love it. It's changed the scope of my career, and I want to give back and make sure that other people get to have the same experience that I had.
Yeah, it is a wonderful opportunity. I was able to serve as fundraising chair for the last for the conference in Malaysia, in Kuching, which was a lot of fun. I think also the one thing that people don't get is you actually get active networking capabilities, and for other people, you build a network of colleagues, whether they be in the same level as you in terms of career path or like a time in career, like early career or mid career, or even older career, but you also get to show what you can do and how you can work. So like references can come out of that. Like if you work with somebody on a chairing, like you either chair or you work on a committee for the conference, and you worked your butt off, well, that chair might just be like, hey, if you have a reference, let me know. I'd be happy to do that. And it's free work. It's volunteer work. However, you do get some benefits out of that, that will help your career later on your resume, or even just through a reference of some sort, which I think is great. And I think this is what, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I think this is what the special part of IMCC is every conference is led by a group of people, and for the most part, conferences are pretty good, and they're pretty valuable in terms of the information that comes out of it. But it's what makes a conference, for me anyway, and I think for to IMCC, is the people that go to IMCC and how welcoming it is at the conference, and I think that's really good. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter where the conference is. I've been to the one in Victoria. I've been to the one in St. John's. I've been to the one in Kuching, and hopefully going to the one in South Africa this year. And every time it's just fun. And every time people are welcoming, I get to meet a slew of people that I've never met before. Either maybe I've met them online, but really more, you've never really met them. You get to meet them in person. You get to spend time with them. And I think that's the benefit of it.
Yeah.
And so, but it really matters, like, where the place is. So this time it's in Cape Town, South Africa. Some conferences have been there before. Dave, you've been there for some of your shark conferences and so forth. Yeah. So like what was the deciding factor for Cape Town, South Africa for this conference?
It's really important that people can come. And we are ostensibly, the Marine program, a globally focused section, a globally focused meeting. And if we only ever have our meetings in North America and Europe, that means we only ever get North Americans and Europeans. And a lot of the most pressing ocean conservation issues, a lot of the frontline communities, a lot of the people that could benefit a lot from these meetings are not found in North America and Europe, and we wanted to make the meeting more accessible.
Our last so 2016, we had our conference in North America. That was in St. John's. 2018, we went to Malaysia. We had never been to Asia before. And then we were supposed to be in Europe, in Germany for the last one, but that ended up going online because of COVID. And so we had never been to the African continent before. And so it was really important to us that we went somewhere we hadn't been. And so that, that left us with basically, Oceania or Africa. And so we had bids out that I don't know, people don't know necessarily how it works, but we basically put out, hey, who wants to host this conference? And, we had Cape Town was the best kind of option that we found. And we hadn't been to Africa before, which is really important. We don't have a huge, at this point, presence in Society for Conservation Biology for marine conservation practitioners from Africa. The African conservation section is quite big for SCB, but they don't have a lot of the marine folks. there are a lot of marine conservation practitioners in Africa, but not necessarily associated with SCB. And so it was really important for us to get to Africa. And so we're going to hopefully be able to provide, a space for them to get to know SCB. And, we have things like pretty big discounts for anybody from an African country in order to come for cheaper, because we recognize it's not necessarily cheap to be in Cape Town. But we're trying.
I just want to briefly follow up on something that Heather said there, that there are so many practitioners who come to this meeting. We were talking briefly before you started recording about some other conferences that happen and how they're not necessarily fun. And Andrew, you mentioned the networking opportunities at this. What's amazing about IMCC compared to many other conferences that I attend is it's not just scientists who are there. There are lots of scientists who are there from all career paths, including several of my longtime conservation heroes who are there, and it's amazing to get to hang out with them. But there's also educators and the people whose job it is to enforce marine protected areas, and the people whose job it is to lobby the government for changes in plastic recycling laws. And you just learn so much and get so many different perspectives, and it's very different from other meetings that I attend, and it's just hugely professionally valuable.
Truly a congress, not a conference, right? So there's a reason that it's the International Marine Conservation Congress, because it's not just academics or it's not just government, it's everyone. Everyone who could potentially play a part in conservation can come and can get something out of it, but also provide their own kind of context to conservation, right? So we have people from all kind of walks of conservation, from like, if you look at what I'm presenting, it's very scientific, like academic kind of focus. And one of the reasons that I'm presenting it at IMCC is actually to get more of a spin from the people who are on the ground conservation all the time, right? So like my work is conservation adjacent, whereas other people are doing this as their day-to-day job, lobbying government, or they're part of an NGO, doing on-the-ground stuff.
So you're hoping that like your presentation sort of starts that conversation of like, okay, here's what I found through the research. How applicable is this? Someone in, say, Africa, an African country, or someone in, like the Southeast or Oceania or anything like that. Is this applicable? Let's have a conversation outside this session or within this session to be able to talk about it. Is that what you're looking at?
Exactly.
That's what I love.
That's
about
a lot
this
of what I do in several of my day jobs now, is try to us how to talk to people who aren't scientists about how to make their work more relevant. And I learned how to do that at IMCCs.
Yeah, I think that's the good part about IMCC. You just never know what's going to happen there, right? Like you never know what session is you're gonna really truly fall in love with. Because I think the biggest problem with a conference or a congress is the fact that you look at the program and you're like, okay, I want to attend this session, but I also want to attend this session, which is at this kind of the same time, and then I want to attend this because there's so many good sessions. But I find sometimes like when I go to a session, the session's great, the presentations are wonderful, and because they're from such a variety, like a different backgrounds, and sometimes it's a session on communications, and you're watching people who have gone through a workshop through communications. I think that happened in Malaysia, and so you're getting a lot of different perspectives, but you're learning from it. But you're also learning from the conversations that happen within the session. And I think that's where the benefit, and that's where it comes down. I always going to come back to this, is the people who are like not attacking the presentation, but saying, I see value in this in how I work. Can we talk about this after, and I see a lot of that happening where it's like future collaborations that could happen, or just learning from each other and just being open and supportive of each other. I've never seen, my personal experience at this Congress where, a presenter has been attacked or critiqued right in front of everybody, which has happened at other conferences. I think that just goes to show like the people that come here are just so supportive that it just makes sense from that aspect. And how do you think that was being fostered throughout IMCC? Because I like that you just can't attract like people like that just by action or calls to apply. What is it about IMCC that provides that?
So I think a couple of things. We have a code of conduct that I think Brett Favero put in place. Like he actually wrote a paper on why your conference should have a code of conduct.
Yes.
Anyway, so that was for because Brett chaired the one in St. John's. Anyway, so we have a code of conduct that actually during the registration process, you have to read in order to even finish your registration, right? So I think part of it is like we are setting the expectations right at the beginning. And we have a safety officer who, if anybody has any problems with somebody else or any kind of safety issue, that within the conference there is that safe space to help people. But I also think the biggest thing is just the type of people who are conservationists, either whether it's academics or practitioners or what have you. I don't know. I think it's just maybe it's a personality. That just, I'm not saying that, there aren't problematic people, but I'm sure that there are, but I don't know. It just is a safe space. It's nice. We've set up something really special. And I mean the royal we, not me specifically.
Right.
IMCC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you that it is a mix of things, that we have sort of cultural expectation setting through the code of conduct and through our safety officer, and just regularly reminding people how you behave matters. But also, yeah, the sort of people who are in this world are people who are really smart and really passionate and could have done anything and are choosing to spend their lives saving the ocean, and because they think it's important and they care. And no, I've gone to conferences in other fields, and the people who are there are like, I am in this job because it pays well. And they're not happy at the end of the day. They're not fulfilled. And some of them are certainly very nice, but it's not the same experience as hanging out with a bunch of ocean conservation professionals from all over the world. And a great thing about the meeting with this is, for some of these people, they might be the only person in their department or at their university whose job is ocean conservation. But they get to geek out with other people who feel the same way from all over the world and learn so much. And it's just really special.
Yeah, and I think over time it's built. Like I always tell people that if they can get there, go. Because I think it, and I tell them why I love it so much, and it's the same reasons as you both have mentioned. And we've been talking about this, and it's the reason why we promote it all the time, is because it's our favorite conference because of that, because of how supportive people are. And so I think for me, I think it's a lot of it. Like we had this base, and I agree with you, Heather, with in Newfoundland. It had a different feeling even from Victoria. Victoria was a great conference, but the Newfoundland one for me, the St. John's one was a very different one for me. And maybe a little bit more into it a little bit. I don't know, but it just seemed like it was different. But I think that code of conduct really helps. I think having a safety officer really helps. And that safety officer, like when we went to Malaysia, that was like, it was a lawyer. It was like someone who was involved in mediation. So it wasn't just like somebody who was just appointed. Like it was somebody who was hired for the conference to be like, hey, if you have a problem, a disagreement or whatever, you can go to that person, and that person will help you mediate it either through both parties or just with you or whatever, so that you can still have a good time. Your time is not ruined. I think the other thing too for me is I see a lot of just progression, within the conference in terms of like we're in a very different time than we were 20, where we're more focused on trying to change the way conferences are run, and I find like IMCC has been fairly successful in trying different things. Malaysia, we had a kids program so that people who attended the conference can bring in kids, but not only that, local kids from schools could come and attend as well and benefit from learning we're learning from different kids all around the world. I thought that was really, really, really great. And people were volunteering from the conference to go do presentations. I think Angela did a presentation on the Mariana Trench, and Melissa Marquez did, her presentation on sharks. It was just everybody, like people were just being asked, hey, do you talk? Or people were volunteering. Can I talk to the kids about such and such? And I think it was just great. I think in Malaysia too, I always refer to Malaysia because it was the last in-person one that I went to. We had a hackathon, which was awesome. Trying to like solve marine conservation issues, like with engineers and innovators and all that from all around the world. That was
very different experience.
So much fun to watch. Yeah, it was such a different experience.
We had a D&D podcast that was marine themed, which is now currently still running. We're on episode 400 or 300 or something. I'm part of it.
Yeah.
First time I ever played D&D up on stage. And I'm still doing it. You can't get rid of me now. But anyway, we're really fun.
Yeah, it is. It was a fun podcast to do. We did also Marine Conservation Happy Hour that was up there as well for Oceans Online. There's also Oceans Online that we did. I think is going to be a little bit different this year, but we're also getting a lot of the people from those Oceans Online conferences that we had a while ago that are also coming in that have the same kind of supportive nature as we do at IMCC, which kind of helps. So that's really great. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the programming that, every conference has specific programming that to accomplish. What is the focus, or what are like the major topics, themes? Is that already done before you put out the calls? Because I know the calls for the workshops have been put out and they've been selected. I think they just finished up the abstracts for the sessions and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about like some of the major topics?
Yeah, as we're recording this, abstract review is underway. I'm not sure when it's going to be released, but people will be informed whether or not their submitted abstracts were accepted in early May. And people can register for the meeting regardless. You can attend a conference in general, including IMCC, even if you are not giving a talk or leading a workshop. You can just go and meet people and learn from other talks. Early bird registration, which is a significant discount because it helps us know how many people are coming and plan the meeting. That ends June 28th. Yeah. So in general, we have some of the same types of general sessions over and over again. And those are things like talks about new developments in ocean pollution, talks about new developments in endangered species biology and conservation, talks about climate change and ocean acidification. There are also several symposia, which are sort of member-selected, member-organized, tightly focused groups of talks. And we have several of those that are focused on South Africa and focused on the Western Indian Ocean and regional stuff, as well as some topics that'll be very global in scope and feature case studies from all over the world. There's one that's about ocean defenders, about people who are specifically on the front lines risking their lives to save the ocean, some of whom have been killed. So that's going to be a really powerful session. There's a lot of new developments with sea turtles and new developments with sharks and new developments with whales and new developments with coral reefs. There's really cutting edge world-class science from all over the place, but also opportunities for early career people to present on their master's work and get feedback from some of the world leaders.
Yeah, I remember poster sessions were one of my favorite sessions to go to at this conference, because last time we had a group of high school kids from Cambodia present, and they were amazing.
They were amazing. That was the work
that they've been doing. Yeah, it was awesome, and they knew their stuff. Like, I don't know what I expected going in and listening to them present, but they presented and they knew they were excited, they were passionate, and they got to meet a lot of cool people within within the marine sort of realm of conservation, and I hope they got a lot out of it, because I know I did from their presentation. It was fantastic. But those are the gems that you get in those poster sessions from the students and masters and PhDs and even sometimes postdocs and sometimes people who are still in the industry. And it's not just for graduate students. I feel like sometimes you still see people from all over the place doing their great conservation work. So I think that's awesome. Now there's, South Africa has a lot of conservation going on, and Africa, as we mentioned, has a lot of conservation going on. South Africa is really known, as David, as you know, for their sharks, for their great white sharks. But that's one thing that I'm excited to kind of hear about, is like what other issues, are South Africa as well as other African countries working on. Because I think the interesting part that I didn't really know, and it wasn't until I started to interview more and more people from South Africa, is the diversity of marine ecosystems and animal life and ocean life that is in sort of the Indian Ocean and Atlantic Ocean that and the South Ocean that kind of surround Africa, and I think it's something that we can really learn a lot from. So for both of you, Dave, we can start with you, because you are very familiar with South Africa. Like, what are you interested in learning from being in South Africa?
So every time we go to international conferences or every time we go to another place, it's fascinating to me to learn so many things that are the same no matter where you are, but as well as so many things that are just wildly different and I'd never considered before. The threats are often the same, the solutions are often context
Mm.
specific, community specific, and I find that fascinating. Uh, the marine environment in South Africa is increasingly getting recognized by ocean folks around the world. It was what the Oscar award-winning movie My Octopus Teacher focused on, an area not
Hmm.
far from where we're going to be. And some of the people involved in that movie are going to be giving a presentation on on ocean science communication at IMCC. So that'll be really cool. There will also be a field trip for you to go snorkeling in the My Octopus Teacher kelp forest, which I am for sure doing.
What? Are you serious? That's awesome. That is so cool. A lot of people are going to love that. There's going to be a lot of Instagram posts and TikTok posts on that. That'll be really fun. That's great. Heather, what about yourself?
So maybe a little bit more self-serving, selfishly.
That's fine.
So when I switched to my position that I'm currently in, I actually switched taxa again for like the millionth time. And so I've actually switched over to working on mussels, both freshwater and marine. But one of the thing I'm actually presenting on at IMCC is on salt marsh conservation, because in Nova Scotia, we're losing like a significant percentage of our salt marsh. So we're doing a project on rib mussels. So one of the things that I tend to say a lot, say in like presentations or like when I'm teaching my classes, is like, this has ramifications for management and conservation. And then so what, right? Like if that's all you ever say,
Right.
and I'm not crapping on people who do this because I've done it too, but if your conclusion is just this can impact conservation, okay.
How?
So that's
my exact talk at IMCC is going to be about why you should not do that and what you should do instead.
So I'm
stay tuned.
I'm going to go to David's talk. I'm going to ask him not to schedule at the same time as mine, for that reason. But so I'm working on some salt marsh stuff, and I'm also working on a totally separate project on barriers to marine migration. In Nova Scotia again. They built a causeway between Cape Breton and the mainland, and it was in the 50s, and so they just built it. And now in order to get from the Gulf to the Atlantic, you kind of have to go all the way around Cape Breton. Anyway, and so I basically want to get some tools that now in my position where I am an academic and I have a little bit more freedom and I'm not worried about like losing my job because I irritate the wrong government official, I'm going to become a squeaky wheel it's like when they have to fix the causeway next, we need to do it in a different way than what we currently have done. And so I just I know how to be an academic, but now I need to know a little bit more on how to make things happen. More of the conservation side.
And be effective in the right way.
So again, a little bit more self-serving, just because I feel like up until this point, I've been sort of a conservation, like as a hobby almost, versus my job. And so now that I am in this position, I have purposely designed it so that I can do more actual conservation. My PhD was evolutionary ecology. And again, it had conservation ramifications because I was working on salmonids, but again, I didn't do conservation in my PhD.
Well, I'll tell you what. Something I got excited about is after the conference, how about you come back on the podcast and you talk about what you learned at the podcast about that. So you won't feel as if it would still be in your best interest to learn, but you can help by letting everybody else what you learned. So you don't feel as if it was self-serving, and you can share what you learned. How about that?
Now I have homework.
That'd be awesome.
I'm just kidding.
And we'll discuss it hopefully when I'm there, and we'll be able to talk about it and maybe even talk about it while you're down there. I think that would be a lot of fun in your journey through it. That'd be kind of cool. I think that is something that I think a lot of people, it's good to go there with the goals. I've talked a lot about that in the past, is to go to a conference, you have to have a goal of what you're going to learn. There's been times where I've been to that conference where I haven't presented anything, or I didn't participate in the other things, but I go there and I learn something new. For me, it's interviews, and I get when I go there, but I also learn and I build a lot of contacts that I've had, not only from colleagues, but I end up having great friends like you
Yeah.
guys, where I stay in touch, like in between the conferences and things like that. So I think that's a benefit as well, when you start to, go out with people, have dinner with people, and just kind of like if you're taking a session off because you're exhausted and you want to just chat and you just have chat, or we did last year, we did like a speed networking, exercise and for lunch at one time. And that was fun too, where you get to talk to people. It's almost like speed dating, but for networking, which was a lot of fun, and very, it wasn't a lot of pressure. It was very laid back, and it was a lot of fun. So, so I thought that was great. But yeah, is there anything else that you want people to know of from the conference that we haven't covered today?
So you mentioned something how you didn't present at every IMCC that you went to. I've actually only presented at one. So it wasn't until the IMCC in Kiel, which was online, that I actually presented something, because again, I said my PhD was on salmonids and the freshwater half of their life cycle. And so like I actually wasn't I felt like an imposter, a marine person. In fact, at the time, I was in the freshwater, like when you like can sign up for different things on SCB as a member. I was like part of the freshwater group.
Mm-hmm.
So when I did my postdoc, I was working on sea cucumbers. There's a lot of conservation stuff around sea cucumbers and sea cucumber fisheries. And so finally, I actually hosted my own symposia at IMCC 6, which was online. What was my point? Nobody ever made me feel like an imposter, though. No one was like, oh, you work on salmonids. Why are you here? And if you want to network, the people who are helping plan the conference and planning the sessions and helping volunteer are extremely friendly. And if you want to be friends with us, just come say hi. And like David, how many people went to that karaoke night? And when we were in Malaysia, we had like a huge contingent, like 40 of us.
The high point was 94. That karaoke room is my now platonic ideal of karaoke rooms. It was the VIP room, 2 V's.
Yep.
And that was fun.
But then we did another karaoke night later on too. There was the one in the room, and then there was another one it was like at a restaurant, I think, too, right?
Yep. But it's just fun, right? It's like if you want, don't feel weird about just coming up and introducing yourself. And I think one of the skills that early career people, especially grad students, could work on is networking. Like, how do you just go up and cold say hi to somebody, right? Like your elevator pitch of what you do. And so, we have an early career social that will happen. I don't know. I don't think at this point we've narrowed down where it's going to be. But, just to get everybody who's early career in the same kind of space, on the same sort of frame of mind. But yeah, the networking here is really cool because you could meet, at one table, somebody who's been a conservation practitioner for 30 years, actually, physically defending the ocean. And then, the next table over is somebody who's published 200 papers, a full professor somewhere. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah. I was sitting at one of my stories that I will remember. I'm trying to remember if I should say the name or not, but I sat at a table, I think it was like one of the first nights, and I'm beside like the former director of NOAA, who was doing the keynote at one point. And she turns to me and she's like, hey, like, we don't really know each other. And we were talking and we started chatting. And then she's like, yeah, just put your name and number in my phone and we'll be in touch. And I was just like, it was like a celebrity moment for me. And it was like Ryan Reynolds saying, hey, Andrew, here, just put your number in here and we'll chat later. We'll go in a text chat or a group chat. And you're just like, are you kidding me? Like, this is, and it was like, there was no feeling like imposter syndrome speaking with her. And it was just like a table of people and everybody was participating in the conversation. And it was like, you look around, it's like, there's so many people from different parts of the world, people that I haven't seen in a couple of years for me, and some people who have never met before sitting beside and having great conversations. And that's what I love about it. And there were multiple tables of this, right? And you can go from table to table to table and nobody cared. If you were new, if they didn't know you, it's like, oh, I don't know you. What's your name? And I was like, I'm Andrew. And then, and I think that's what it is.
And there's a leveling effect that happens at this meeting that I don't see at some others where, an early career person and a internationally famous end of career person are both just attendees at IMCC. And it's as a former early career person, that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Now, one thing we're here not only to just talk about the IMCC and go over old stories and how much we love it, but we're trying to attract new people because we want more people to come. We want the people that attended before. We want new people to come in. We do have people listening to this podcast who are in South Africa. For both of you, and I'll ask this to each of you. So Heather, we'll start with you. What would be your pitch to them of why, if they've never attended IMCC, what would you say, like right here and right now, like why you think they should come to IMCC in Cape Town in October?
Oh, put me on the spot.
Putting you on the spot.
It truly is a little bit indescribable. How different. If you've been to a conference and like conferences are not for you, maybe this Congress is for you, because this is not. I've said this before, like that the first time I went to IMCC, I was like, what is this place? Because it's just so different from any other academic conference I've ever been to. And because that's not what we are. We're a conservation Congress. And so just come and check it out. I promise you'll have fun. I promise that this is a very unique group of people, and giving a seat at the table to anybody who wants one, I think is kind of one of our biggest, green flags.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
I like that.
And also I would love meeting new people. And so come find us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. David, how about yourself?
If you go to an IMCC, I can promise that you will learn things that will change how you approach your daily professional life. I can promise that you will meet people who will inspire you and you will keep in touch with for years to come. I can promise that you will feel valued and respected and welcomed in ways that you might not have at other meetings. And by the way, we're having it this year in one of the most beautiful cities in the world.
It's true. Yeah, a lot of people are excited for having in South Africa. I know I'm excited. I would tell people the same thing. It is indescribable. Like it's one of those things where you almost have to experience it before you can really come out and say how you feel about it. And it's going to be a positive experience. I really do say that with 100% full confidence. It's going to be a positive experience. It's going to be something where you're going to learn. You're going to meet new people. You're going to get a lot of potentially some collaborations in the future, potential, leads towards jobs in the future. Who knows? Like there's a lot that can happen. What I will say is you will be 100% deemed to fail if you don't try, if you don't go. You won't really know what it's about until you go. And I highly recommend people who go, especially those who are quote unquote closer to South Africa, in the African countries that surround. If you're able to get there, that would be great. Like David said, you mentioned, and you might want to repeat it again, just if people are coming from, local countries that may not have sort of the means or maybe from a developing country, there's some discounts for them to arrive.
Yes.
Can you just give a little bit more of a description?
There are significant registration discounts associated with being early career, being from Africa, or being from a UN designated developing country. And there are also travel scholarships available specifically for early career people from those places.
Amazing. I love that. That's one of the things I love about IMCC, and it gets more people to come. And I think that's wonderful. Heather and David, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about this. I'd love to invite you back, or even other people from the board, if they are able to talk about their experiences with IMCC, and we'll talk more about it. And as more the programming and workshops get even more developed in some of the abstracts, we can kind of highlight some of those talks that people see, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that, and you're, of course, both of you are welcome back on. Heather, we're going to talk definitely after IMCC to find out all the tools and things that you learned and people that you met, putting you on the spot. I like doing this. I like securing interviews for the future as people are on, so they can't say no. But I think it'd be very valuable to everybody who attended, as well as who weren't able to at the time. But I highly recommend that you go to this conference. I'll put the link to the advanced registration, the early bird registration, so you can get discounts. But thank you both so much.
One more thing. We are actually, we don't have the dates yet, opening a late breaking abstract call. Probably in a couple of weeks. So if you missed the original deadline, which was April 11th, and you,
Yes.
oh shoot, I really want to go, especially now that you've seen this podcast, I've changed my mind, I now want to go. We are opening up a late breaking abstract submission, but we're probably not until after May 3rd, which is...
That's fine.
So,
not a problem, because when this goes up, people listen to it all the time. So I'll put the link in so you guys can share the link once it's up. I'll update it, and we'll send people over there. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for mentioning that. Really appreciate it. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to hearing from you again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, David, for joining me on the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I can't wait for the International Marine Conservation Congress in Cape Town, South Africa, October 13th, 2024. This is going to be the conference you do not want to miss. One, because we're out of the pandemic and we're back to meeting in person. Two, this is probably one of the conferences that I've had the most fun at. Not only from an educational standpoint, not only from meeting colleagues and networking standpoint, but just fun. Just the people are fun. The topics are fun. The venues are fun. Everything is fun. And at a conference, you need to have fun. You need to go and enjoy what you do. And I think that's what we do here at the IMCC 2024 or IMCC 7, whatever that might be. So if you want to go register right now, it's early bird registration as of now. Check it out. I'll put the link in the show notes. We're going to go to speakupforblue.com/IMCC7. That's IMCC7. Check that out. And I want to thank, again, Heather and David for joining me on the podcast to talk about the IMCC. If you want to hit me up on Instagram, you can do so. I'm available at How to Protect the Ocean. That's at How to Protect the Ocean. By the way, just a little sneak peek. I'm going to have something big coming up in July, around mid-July, maybe end of July. Let's say August. There's something big coming up. I want to bring our community together. I'm in a lot of different places. I see people and talk to people in a lot of different places. And I know Instagram is not the place for everybody to contact people and contact folks. So I'm coming up with an app. I'm designing an app, or really right now I'm like figuring out which app is best, which community app is best to share information, to have discussions. There'll be some premium options there, but it'll be free for everybody if they want to be a part of this community. It's going to be a lot of fun. So check that out. There'll be more news coming soon. But if you're interested in signing up, I will have the information up on Oceans Week, which is next week. So check out next week. I've got a lot of episodes ready to go. I'm going to be posting every day for Oceans Week next week. So check that out. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.